It is 2007. Eric Schmidt is sitting in Apple's boardroom in Cupertino, voting on company strategy as a member of Apple's board of directors. At the same time, his engineers 40 miles away in Mountain View are quietly building the operating system that will become Android. Steve Jobs doesn't know yet. He is about to unveil the most important product of his life, and the man he trusts most in that room is already building the weapon to destroy it. On January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco and held up a device no one had ever seen. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator, he said. Then, these are not three separate devices. This is one device. The audience lost its mind. The world changed that afternoon. The original iPhone launched at $499 and sold 1.4 million units in its first quarter. By the end of 2008, Apple had captured 13% of the global smartphone market, a market it had essentially invented in its modern form. The App Store launched in July 2008 and generated $1 million in revenue in its first day. In its first weekend, users downloaded 10 million applications. Apple didn't just build a phone. It built a platform, an economy, and a culture. No company on earth had the design language, the hardware integration, or the brand loyalty to challenge it. Or so everyone thought. Google was founded in 1998 by Larry Page and Sergey Brin in a Menlo Park garage. By 2004, it was the most visited site on the internet. By 2006, it had acquired YouTube for $1.65 billion in what looked to many like an overpay. It wasn't. Google understood one thing above all else. The future of the internet was mobile, and whoever controlled the mobile operating system controlled the future of search. In 2005, before the iPhone existed, Google quietly acquired a small startup called Android Incorporated for $50 million. The team, led by Andy Rubin, was building a mobile operating system from scratch. Google's strategy was the mirror image of Apple's. Give the OS away for free to every hardware manufacturer on Earth. No licensing fee. No exclusivity. Just install Google's software and Google Search and let the ecosystem do the rest. It was the Gates playbook, and Apple, of all companies, should have recognized it. The war. Round 1, 2007. The man in the room. When the iPhone launched in January 2007, Eric Schmidt was one of the first people Jobs called. They were close. Schmidt had joined Apple's board in 2006, and Jobs valued his counsel. What Jobs did not know was that Schmidt had been briefed on Android's development inside Google. He was, in the most literal sense, sitting on both sides of the table. Schmidt resigned from Apple's board in August 2009, 2 years after the iPhone launched and 1 year after the first Android phone shipped. By then, the damage was done. Jobs later told his biographer Walter Isaacson, "I will spend my last dying breath if I need to, and I will spend every penny of Apple's $40 billion in the bank to right this wrong. I'm going to destroy Android because it's a stolen product." That was not a business statement. That was a declaration of war from a man who felt personally betrayed. Round 2, 2008. The first Android phone. On October 22, 2008, HTC shipped the Dream, the first commercial Android phone. It was clunky, slow, and obviously inferior to the iPhone. Tech reviewers were kind, but unconvinced. Inside Apple, the reaction was closer to relief than alarm. Jobs reportedly called it a shit product. He wasn't wrong about its quality. He was wrong about what it represented. The Dream wasn't a product. It was a proof of concept. Google had demonstrated that Android could ship, that manufacturers would adopt it, and that the model worked. Within 12 months, Motorola, Samsung, LG, and Sony Ericsson had all signed on. Apple had one hardware partner, Apple. Google now had dozens. By the end of 2009, Android held 3.9% of the global smartphone market. It was a rounding error. It was also growing at 900% year-over-year. Round 3, 2010, the Nuclear Declaration. In 2010, Apple launched the iPhone 4, widely regarded as the most beautiful consumer device ever made at the time of its release. That same year, Android surpassed iPhone in quarterly US smartphone activations for the first time. Jobs responded not with a product, but with a lawsuit. Apple sued HTC in March 2010, alleging infringement of 20 patents covering the core architecture of the iPhone. It was the opening shot of what became a 7-year global patent war spanning 4 continents, dozens of courtrooms, and billions of dollars in legal fees. Apple sued Samsung in 2011 in what became the most expensive patent case in tech history. A $1 billion judgment initially awarded to Apple, reduced on appeal, fought and re-litigated for nearly a decade. The courts became a second front in the smartphone war. But while Apple's lawyers filed briefs, Android kept shipping. Every month, more manufacturers, more carriers, more countries, more users. Round 4, 2012, the scale breaks. By 2012, Android commanded 68% of the global smartphone market. Apple held 19%. The reversal had taken less than 4 years. In absolute unit terms, more Android phones shipped in a single quarter than all iPhones sold in the entire history of the product to that point. The dynamic was structurally identical to the 1980s PC war. Apple had the better product. Google had the better distribution. Apple's iOS was locked to Apple hardware, which started at $199 with a carrier contract and rose steeply from there. Android ran on devices that cost $49 in China, India, Brazil, and Southeast Asia. The next billion smartphone users, $49 was not a marginal difference. It was the entire decision. Google didn't beat Apple in the boardrooms of San Francisco. It beat Apple in the streets of Mumbai and Sao Paulo. The turning point was not a product launch or a court ruling. It was a strategic choice Apple made in 2007 and never reversed, to keep iOS exclusive to Apple hardware. It was the same choice Jobs made with the Macintosh in 1984. It produced the same result 23 years later. Jobs believed, correctly, that controlling both hardware and software produced a superior experience. The iPhone's seamless integration of chip, screen, camera, and OS was not possible on a fragmented Android ecosystem where Samsung's software fought with Qualcomm's chips and a carrier's bloatware. Apple's product was better. But better only wins when price is not the deciding variable. And in the global smartphone market, price was almost always the deciding variable. The thing Apple failed to see, or refused to accept, was that Google did not need to win the premium market. It only needed to own the base. Once Android was on 70% of the world's phones, Google's search, Gmail, Maps, and YouTube were on 70% of the world's phones. Google had never been in the hardware business. It was in the data business. Android was always just the delivery mechanism. Google won the world. Apple won the money. And understanding why both statements are true is the most important business lesson this rivalry teaches. The first lesson: know what business you are actually in. Apple thought it was in the phone business. Google knew it was in the attention business. Android was never a product. It was an acquisition channel for the most valuable commodity of the 21st century: human attention at scale. Before building your product, ask what you are actually selling. The answer is rarely the thing in the box. The second lesson: never trust a board member with a conflict. Schmidt sat on Apple's board for 3 years while Google developed Android. That access to Apple's roadmap, Its pricing strategy, its product timeline, was an intelligence operation Apple funded itself. Governance is not a formality. Who sits in your room determines what leaves it. The third lesson: free is a business model, not a concession. Google gave Android away and captured 72% of the global market. Apple charged premium prices and captured 85% of the industry's profits. Both are valid strategies, but only if you choose one deliberately and build everything around it. The companies that lose are the ones that try to split the difference. Apple and Google fought over the smartphone, but there was a third company watching every move, quietly building the infrastructure both of them depended on and charging them both for the privilege. That story is next. This is the Rivalry Code.